The New York Times is now reporting that the entire east wing of the White House is going to be torn down by this weekend, which is a pretty stunning thing, right? Trump had said this wasn't going to touch the White House. Now the entire east wing is going to be torn down by this weekend, according to the New York Times. I'll put up the picture because we've been showing a live camera of the actual demolition, and obviously it's a bit dark. But our photojournalist there is going to, be zooming in. We'll pull out a little bit if he can, just to see the proximity. Yep, here we go. Sorry, we're communicating here over earpiece. So you can see it right there next to the actual center of the White House itself. You are warning, Edward, that there could be a lot more surprises to come. I mean, this is a pretty big surprise. Not going to touch the White House and now demolishing the whole East Wing. What do you mean with more surprises?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think we're going to see more and more surprises down the road, both in terms of the impact on the executive mansion itself. It could go beyond the East Wing. It could affect the Executive Mansion building itself, the original 1800 building. But I think much more likely what we're going to see is a ballroom that's going to be even more ostentatious. And it's going to turn the Executive Mansion into an annex to the party space.
Okay, wait, let me make sure just to put, as I'm hearing you say this, I'm just thinking about it, right? A White House that I've seen as a tourist, that I've seen as a journalist on the inside. You're saying that the upshot of all this may be that the actual White House itself, that people think of as the White House, will essentially become an annex to a large ballroom in terms of how it appears, if this goes ahead even as currently planned.
Yeah, if you look at it now, and like I was born in Washington, D.C., I lived most of my life there. If you look at the Executive Mansion now, you see 225 years of history, even further back to the influence of George Washington and Thomas Jefferson and the architect James Hoban. And you see that history. Now your attention is going to be drawn to this giant ballroom, which really has one man's name on it. It's going to cast the Executive Mansion into the shade and turn it much more into a presidential palace. And I just say, as a Founding Fathers historian, spent most of my life with George Washington, I think all of the founders would have been disgusted by this.
Much more of a presidential palace. Lulu, just hearing Edward, who was the chief historian of the White House Historical Association, Trump's first term, right? And his life studying this, talking about the ostentatiousness that it's going to look like. The White House itself is is an annex to an actual ballroom, that it's going to look like a presidential palace in other countries, so different than what the White House is in the United States. Whoa, what's your reaction to that, Lulu?
I think this is going to be delivering President Trump's opposition a huge gift. At the end of the day, we in America are a country of forgetting, right? We forget our history. We don't often celebrate it. We are a country that famously moves forward all the time and looks to the future. This is one of those places which I think most people hold in their hearts because it is the most visible symbol of American history, the best of American history. And this president has decided, without any consultation, without any preservation, to simply tear it down. And I think, what we've seen this White House do is bet that the American people will forget, that there will be another thing that they will be upset about or another thing they'll find interesting, and they won't focus on this. But this ballroom will endure, and I think it will cause this administration a lot of headaches in the future, because what will have been lost and what is being built are two very different things. And I think Democrats and others can point to it and say, this is where this president has put his focus, and it really isn't a symbol of the America that most people want to embrace.
David, you worked at the White House. You were there every single day.
Yes.
What's your reaction when you look at these pictures, you look at the demolition itself, and then after that visceral emotional reaction, you then hear what Edward's saying about the outcome here being that this would look like a presidential palace in another country, a ballroom with an annex?
Yeah, no, I think it's revealing about the mindset of this president. I will tell you, Aaron, every single day when I worked there, I walked into that building with reverence and a deep awareness that every nook and cranny, every wall was witness to history of our country, and some of the greatest leaders in the history of our country worked in that building, dealing with the challenges and crises of their time and building our future. And the wanton this is sort of a metaphor for a lot of what we've seen, the sort of reckless destruction on the one hand, and the erasure of history. And these are the hallmarks of what this president has done. Now, Tom Tillis is right that we have people who are day to day in this country trying to struggle on their paychecks to take care of their bills and hope for something better. And I think that the visual of this, it will just compound their sense of revulsion about what's going on here.
Well, also, I mean, I will say, and I know we sit here and think of this, but when, thinking of places I've traveled in recent years that the world has seen images from, and that we all have seen images from, of such destruction, right? And to think that you're seeing an image like this and it's the actual White House in Washington, D.C., there's something so deeply jarring about that, Edward. When the White House says that this ballroom is just another renovation, right? There have been renovations in the past, that this is just one in a long line. Is there any truth in that? I mean, obviously, it sounds like you're making it clear that, no, this is very different.
Yeah, I'd say, first of all, I've got a lot of attention from media outlets all around the world who are very interested and very upset by what's going on. So we're sending the wrong image abroad. But the administration's talking point that this is just like any other change is absolutely disingenuous. And it's a misdirection because they're suggesting anybody who criticizes this is just a stick in the mud. They don't want change. The issue is that this addition turns the White House and the Executive Mansion into something that it is not. It is no longer the people's house. It is no longer in tune with what the founders intended, and it's no longer in tune with the history of our country. It sends the wrong message.
David, this conversation that Trump talked about it, and I know you were when he called you in 2010 about the ballroom. You were at the White House, obviously working for President Obama. So you write in your book about this. He referenced it, but you write in your book about it and about what Trump told you. He said, I build ballrooms, beautiful ballrooms. You can go to Tampa and check out one of them for yourself. I see you have these state dinners on the lawn there in these bleep little tents. Let me build you a ballroom you can assemble and take apart. Trust me, it'll look great. What do you remember about that conversation in the context of what we're looking at right now?
Well, first of all, he was suggesting a modular ballroom that could be constructed and taken apart, and that's not what's going on here. This is literally the replacement of the East Wing of the White House with a ballroom, and that is something quite different. He obviously knew then that wasn't going to fly with us. He thinks it should be a palace. He thinks of himself that way. It's so ironic. We're going to celebrate the 250th anniversary of our Declaration of Independence from a king, and he aspires to be one. And the surroundings that he's creating, he thinks are befitting that. The thing that made the White House so dignified was the simplicity of it. That we weren't about kings. We were about people kind of working every day to try and make the country better in relatively modest, surroundings. But so this is really quite different. But my recollection of that was that he thought it wasn't right for the country, that it was bad for the country to not have a kind of palace-like setting for these state dinners. And he misunderstands why people were so eager to come. It's because of what America represented, not because of the gold that we had around us. And so he is acting on the feelings that he expressed that day, but he's doing it with a kind of wanton destruction that he didn't even propose then.
All right. Thank you all very much.